A quiet night in Santa Monica. A young woman alone in her home. A candle flickers near the door. The gas is on. One spark, and everything disappears. But the explosion never comes. What police find instead is far more disturbing. A brutal murder, a failed cover-up, and a trail of evidence that points to a truth so shocking, it still divides everyone who hears it. This isn't just a crime. It's a story where justice may have completely failed.
She does not seem like the kind of person who's going to be found murdered in her apartment.
Juliana Redding was living the kind of life many dream about. At 21 years old, she had moved from Arizona to Santa Monica, chasing opportunity, independence, and something bigger than herself. She balanced her ambitions with reality, studying at college while working to support herself. To her family, she seemed happy, focused, and determined. Nothing about her life suggested danger was closing in. On March 15th, everything appeared normal. Juliana spent part of her day playing golf, then returned home to her bungalow. That evening, she relaxed, watching television, unwinding like any ordinary night. There were no signs that this would be her last. The next day, something felt wrong. Her mother, Patricia, tried to call her, but there was no answer. At first, it didn't seem unusual. But as hours passed, the silence became unsettling. Then came a call from Juliana's neighbors. They hadn't seen her all day. Her dog was inside the house, but everything else felt eerily still. By evening, concern turned into fear. Patricia contacted the police and asked them to check on her daughter. When officers arrived, nothing immediately stood out. Juliana's car was parked outside. The home looked undisturbed, but the moment they stepped inside, something felt off. The air was thick. A strong smell of gas filled the bungalow. Near the entrance, a candle burned quietly. The stove had been turned on, but not lit. Gas was pouring into the house. It was a setup, a delayed explosion waiting to happen. If the candle had ignited the fumes, the entire scene would have been destroyed, along with any evidence inside. But the explosion never came. As officers searched further, they found Juliana in her bedroom. She was already gone. The scene told a violent story. There were clear signs of a struggle. Furniture had been moved. Objects were out of place. This wasn't quick or silent. Juliana had fought back, hard. She had been strangled. Evidence later revealed her DNA beneath her fingernails, proof that she had desperately tried to pry her attacker's hands away from her throat. In her final moments, she had resisted with everything she had. Even more chilling, phone records showed she had tried to call 911. The call never connected. Somewhere between dialing for help and her final breath, the line went dead. Investigators began reconstructing the timeline. They believe the attack happened around 10 p.m. the previous night. Neighbors later reported hearing noises, movement, shouting, but nothing that seemed alarming enough at the time. It could have been anything. A disagreement, a gathering, nothing that would make someone call the police. But now, those sounds took on a much darker meaning. The crime scene held multiple DNA samples, on her clothing, on her phone, on the door, even on her throat. Whoever had been inside that bungalow had left traces behind. The question was, who? Attention quickly turned to someone close to Juliana, a man named John Gilmore. Their relationship had been unstable, marked by arguments and past incidents of aggression. He had once broken into her home. He had damaged her property. To her father, he had always been a concern. When questioned, Gilmore admitted he had gone to her house the next morning. He said he knocked, saw her car, but got no answer. He claimed he noticed nothing unusual except for a candle burning inside. Investigators dug deeper. Surveillance footage placed him elsewhere at the time of the murder. He had been at a restaurant, then a store, and later at a party. Multiple witnesses confirmed it. His alibi held. Then came a twist no one expected. The DNA found at the crime scene didn't belong to a man. It belonged to a woman. The investigation shifted completely. Detectives began looking into every woman connected to Juliana's life. Friends, acquaintances, co-workers. They explored possibilities, jealousy, rivalry, hidden conflicts. But every sample they collected came back negative until another name surfaced. Munir, a physician who had once been close to Juliana. They met while she was working at a restaurant. He offered her a better job, and eventually she moved in with him. At first, it seemed like an opportunity. Stability, support, a step forward. But things changed. Munir became possessive, controlling. His gestures, once generous, began to feel overwhelming. He proposed to her, promised expensive gifts, lavish rewards, but something about it didn't feel right. Juliana pulled away. She moved out, started fresh in her bungalow. What she didn't know was that Munir was hiding a secret. He was married, with children in another country. When Juliana discovered the truth, she cut ties completely. At the same time, her father had been involved in a business deal with Munir. That deal collapsed amid suspicions of illegal activity. Then, just days later, Juliana was dead. Munir became a person of interest. But there was a problem. He was gone. He had left the country. Investigators couldn't question him, couldn't collect his DNA, couldn't confront him with evidence. But they didn't stop digging. They began looking at the people around him. And that's when they found her. Kelly Sue Park, a woman with a history tied closely to Munir. Financial records showed he had transferred over $1 million to her. Her background raised red flags. There were whispers of intimidation, of threats, of her acting on his behalf in the past. Police placed her under surveillance. Then came the breakthrough. They recovered a discarded cigarette. The DNA matched. It matched the evidence found all over Juliana's bungalow. On her clothes, on the door, on her phone, on her throat. Kelly Sue Park had been inside that house. She was arrested and charged with murder, but the case was far from over. Prosecutors believed they understood what had happened. They theorized that Munir had hired Park to confront Juliana, maybe to intimidate her, maybe to send a message, but something went wrong. Juliana fought back, and the situation escalated into murder. The gas, the candle, the attempted explosion. It all pointed to a desperate attempt to erase the crime. But in court, things began to fall apart. The prosecution wanted to argue that Park was acting under Munir's orders, that she was essentially his enforcer, but the judge ruled that there wasn't enough direct evidence to support that theory. So the case relied heavily on DNA, and the defense attacked it. They argued that the DNA could have been transferred indirectly, that Park may have touched an object months earlier, which somehow ended up in Juliana's home, that there was no direct proof she had been there during the murder. No eyewitnesses, no confession, just DNA. They introduced the concept of secondary transfer, suggesting that her DNA could have been planted unknowingly, that someone else could have committed the crime. It was a bold argument, and it worked. In 2013, after years of legal battles, the jury delivered their verdict. Not guilty. Kelly Sue Park walked free. The courtroom erupted. Juliana's family was devastated. To them, the evidence had been overwhelming. The DNA, the connections, the motive. And yet, no one was held accountable. Munir remained overseas, beyond the reach of U.S. law. With no extradition treaty in place, he was effectively untouchable. The man at the center of it all was never questioned. Years later, he would be arrested in another country for fraud, accused by multiple victims of deception and harm. But even then, he managed to walk free again. Park would also face new charges tied to fraud and deception. And once again, she slipped away. Two people, both deeply connected to the case, both surrounded by suspicion, both free. And Juliana? She became a memory. Her family was left with questions that may never be answered. Her mother found solace in painting, often working in Juliana's room, trying to hold on to something that was taken too soon. For them, time never fully moved forward. Part of their lives remained trapped in 2008, in that bungalow, in that moment when everything changed. This case doesn't end with justice. It doesn't offer closure. It leaves behind something far more unsettling. The possibility that the truth is known, but will never be proven, that the people responsible walked away, and that sometimes, even with evidence, even with motive, even with everything pointing in one direction, the system can still fail. Juliana Redding's story remains one of the most disturbing examples of how a crime can be both solved and unsolved at the same time. Because deep down, many believe they know what happened. They just can't prove it. And that may be the most terrifying part of all. If you found this case shocking, make sure to like and subscribe. More true crime stories coming soon. Stay aware. Stay vigilant.